shopping with her mom, aunt, and best friends. Tammy and the group are sitting on a bench drinking champagne while her mom holds up a dress and asks what the group thinks of each dress. Her mom does this for several dresses in a row. What type of preference assessment is the mom most likely conducting? Okay, so pretty straightforward preference assessment question. Remember, what are our rules for preference assessments? How many stimuli are we assessing at a time? If we are assessing one stimulus, that will be a single stimulus preference assessment. If we are assessing two stimuli at the same time, it's forced choice or paired choice. If it's three or more, it's some sort of multiple stimulus with or without replacement. So what is happening here? How many stimuli is the mom assessing at once? So her mom holds up a dress, says, what do you think? Goes on to the next dress, what do you think? Next dress, what do you think? So one at a time, several dresses in a row, what type of preference assessment is the mom conducting? A single stimulus preference assessment. If you break down preference assessment questions with that idea of first asking yourself how many stimuli are being assessed, you'll never miss one, okay? Is it one? Is it two? Is it three or more? There are several ways to collect information about a client when conducting assessments. What is the most reliable assessment measure? Okay, so we know we have many ways we can get information during assessments. We can conduct interviews, we can do checklists, we can directly observe and take ABC data. We can do functional assessments where we're looking at the actual functions and manipulation, right? What is the most reliable? A, indirect assessments. Indirect assessments, right, involve interviews and checklists and things like that, but we aren't actually observing the client. So indirect assessments are the least reliable, okay? You're not actually watching the client engage in any behavior. Any data you're collecting, any information you're gathering is secondhand, right, and not directly observed from the client. So A is the least reliable. What about B, direct assessment? Well, this is better. Now we're actually watching the client perform some sort of response or behavior, and we're taking some sort of ABC data or event recording. So B is better, but is there a better answer than a direct assessment? Remember, always read all of your answer choices. We want the best answer. So C, functional analysis. Is functional analysis more reliable than a direct assessment? Yes. With the functional analysis, we are actually manipulating things in the environment to try to determine the function of a behavior. So both are observing the learner, but with a direct assessment, you're strictly an observer. You're not actually manipulating anything. With the functional analysis, we are manipulating things. Therefore, it's more reliable than a direct assessment. So C, so far, is our best answer. Read D, event recording. Event recording is just frequency. It's not going to be more reliable. Event recording is part of a direct assessment, okay? A functional analysis involves manipulating the environment and trying to determine the function through systematic manipulation. Therefore, C is our most reliable assessment measure. Okay, reading the question, reading each answer choice takes time, right? However, the more you do it and the more you understand why the wrong answers are wrong, the right answers are right, while you're studying, the quicker you're going to get, okay? You don't get faster on the exam by just rushing through the questions. You get faster by getting better at the exam as a whole. And you do that by reading every answer choice, okay? And understanding why the answer choice is wrong or while it's correct. Your supervisor requests that you take whole interval data on in-seat behavior, remaining seated, for your client during each 30-minute group period. Which of the following would be the most appropriate way of taking this data? Okay, so this is a tricky-ish question, right? But there's a giveaway here, right? So we are looking at whole interval data, okay? So we need to find what's the most appropriate way of taking whole interval data. Well, what is whole interval data? Whole interval data is taking data on a behavior. If that behavior happens for an entire interval, it's a response. If it doesn't happen the entire interval, it's a non-response, right? Or it's incorrect. So we need to find the answer choice where we're taking data on a behavior and marking it as correct or as a response if it happens the entire time, okay? And this is why knowing terms and definitions is so important. If you know what whole interval data is, this question becomes very simple because all you're doing is simply finding, okay, this is the answer choice where I'm taking whole interval data, okay? Don't go into the exam unsure of your terms and definitions because a question like this can give you a lot of difficulty, okay? So A, break the 30 minutes into 31-minute intervals. If the client remains in his chair for some of the interval, record it as correct. Okay, so this is immediately wrong. Why? Well, whole interval data requires the client to engage in the behavior for the entire interval. A is saying for some of the interval. A is out, okay? B, break the 30 minutes into 15 2-minute intervals. If the client remains in the chair for 2 minutes, record that interval as correct. Okay, so how long does the client have to stay in the chair? 2 minutes, our interval is 2 minutes. The client must remain in the chair for that whole interval. B looks really good, right? We have intervals, we have whole interval data, right? 2 minutes for 2-minute intervals. B looks really good. Read all of your answer choices. Is there a better answer? C, every 5 minutes, look up and check if your client is seated. If they are, record a response. What kind of discontinuous measurement is this? This, of course, is momentary time sampling, right? At the end of an interval, we look up, is the behavior occurring? Is it not? Okay, not what we're looking for though. We need whole interval data. And then D, using a stopwatch, record how long your client remains seated, 27 out of 30 minutes. D is strictly some sort of duration measurement, right? So therefore, B is our best answer. This is a good example of going through each answer choice. You're going to understand the terms and definitions better, right? B is our best fit here, okay? Because the client must remain in the chair for the whole interval, and only then will that response be correct. You're planning to order pizza from Uber Eats, but the restaurant that you want to order from doesn't open until 4:30 p.m. every day. What type of basic reinforcement schedule is your ordering pizza on? Okay, so this happened to me yesterday. Like I always say, you want to start applying what you're learning to your real life. Behavior analysis is all about real life. So think about your situations in your day-to-day and how can you apply the terms you're learning, okay? So that's what we're gonna do here. I ordered pizza, right, at 4:30 yesterday. I could not order pizza until it became 4:30, right, because that's when the pizza place opened. So what type of reinforcement schedule am I ordering on? So it's a basic schedule question. We have responses, we have ratios and intervals. So the first question you want to ask in basic reinforcement schedule questions is, are we dealing with time or are we dealing with responses? If we're dealing with time, it's got to be intervals. If we're dealing with responses, it has to be ratio. Well, this is dependent on time, right? Because I can't do anything until 4:30 p.m. No matter how many times I try to order, right, the responses, nothing will happen until 4:30 p.m. Okay, so we're dealing with time here. Now, is this time changing every day or is it fixed? Well, it's fixed. It's not some days 4:30, some days 2:30. Every day I need to wait until enough time has passed till it gets to 4:30 to where I will be reinforced for ordering pizza. So the type of basic reinforcement schedule here is a fixed interval, okay? Remember, R stands for, or FR is a fixed ratio. It's dependent on responses. FI, fixed interval, dependent on time. VR, variable ratio, dependent on an average number of responses. BI, variable interval, an average number of time. Andrea's neighborhood is a great place to trick or treat during Halloween. Andrea and her friends always go to the houses with the lights on because they know they will give them candy. They typically avoid the houses with the lights off, however. What best describes Andrea and her friends' behavior? So, through some sort of learning history, Andrea and her friends have learned that the houses with the lights on will give them candy, aka reinforcement. The houses with the lights off will not. What is Andrea doing? What are they doing? Are they response generalizing? Well, what is the response here? The response here is going to houses and trick-or-treating. So it's the same responses, right? So they're not response generalizing because response generalizing involves multiple responses, right? That's not occurring here. It's only the same response, right? But they're able to what? They're able to discriminate between houses with the lights on, houses with the lights off through differential reinforcement, right? Reinforced for houses lights on, not reinforced or extinction with lights off. They've learned to discriminate which houses will and won't give them candy. B looks very good. Read all of our answer choices. C, shaping. Is any behavior being shaped here? Are there any successive approximations? No, they already have the response in their repertoire of trick-or-treating, but they are discriminating between houses. And then extinction burst. Is anybody going through an extinction burst? Is anybody being put on extinction? No, right? They have already engaged in the learning. They know the learning, right? So they only go to the houses with the lights on because they learn to discriminate who and who won't give them reinforcement. So B is our best answer. Andrea and her friends are discriminating between houses. In order to take money out of an ATM, you must enter your PIN number in the correct order. Yesterday, while at the ATM, you forgot your PIN number and were denied money. Each time you were denied, you entered your PIN number with more intensity until you finally gave up. What best describes what occurred in this scenario? Okay, so think about it, right? It's kind of a vague question, right? So you're at an ATM, you're entering your PIN number, which typically does what? Typically provides your reinforcement as you can now start to take out money. Today you forget and you're not getting reinforced, right? You're no longer getting that reinforcement of correctly entering your PIN. So what do? You start entering it with more intensity, right? Banging on the numbers, hitting the numbers harder, pushing the numbers harder, okay? Until you finally give up. What does this sound like? What are you going through? Is it A, spontaneous recovery? What is spontaneous recovery? Spontaneous recovery is the reemergence or the reappearance of a previously extinct behavior. This is not a previously extinct behavior, right? Because typically when you put your PIN number in, you get reinforced, okay? So extinction might be occurring, right? But this isn't a behavior coming back out of nowhere. B, backwards chaining. Are you being reinforced, right? Are you being prompted through and reinforced at the last behavior? No, right? This is a skill you already know, allegedly, right? No one's engaging in any sort of prompting strategies here, okay? So C, extinction burst. What is an extinction burst? Extinction burst is a temporary increase in frequency, magnitude, or intensity of a behavior when denied reinforcement, right? What is happening here? You're being denied reinforcement. Your behavior is increasing in intensity, and then you give up, the behavior decreases, you are experiencing an extinction burst. C is probably our best answer. Let's look at D, behavior chain interruption strategy. Again, no one is teaching you this skill, okay? You're simply being denied reinforcement for a previously reinforced behavior. Your behavior is increasing. Therefore, you are experiencing an extinction burst. Tom, a BCBA, explains that it is important to establish praise as a reinforcer. Praise can be used across many behaviors and settings. Praise functions as a what? Okay, so let's start with the sentence, praise can be used across many behaviors and settings. What does that sound like to you? Okay, that sounds like generalization to me, right? When we generalize, we go across behaviors, settings, people, things like that. So praise sounds like it can be generalized, okay? So after that, they want to know praise functions as what? So now using that knowledge, okay, let's get into our answer choices. Try to start to figure out the question, especially when studying, before you read the answer choices. Eventually, you'll just be able to answer the question without even looking at the answer choices, okay? Once you get really good at it. So praise functions is what? A, primary reinforcer. What is a primary reinforcer? A primary reinforcer is a reinforcer that we are born learning or born being reinforced by. Okay, in other words, food, water, shelter, warmth, these kind of things. Everybody is reinforced by those at birth without any learning history. Praise needs to be established. It needs to be conditioned. You have to learn about praise. Therefore, praise is not a primary reinforcer. B, response cost. Are you removing a token or an item in response to a behavior? No, right? We're just talking about praise being established as a reinforcer. Response cost is a punishment procedure anyway, right? So B is wrong. C, generalized conditioned reinforcer. Okay, think about it. Praise can be generalized, right? Used across many behaviors and settings. Praise is a conditioned or learned reinforcer. Therefore, praise is what? Generalized conditioned reinforcer. Boom. So even if you've never seen generalized conditioned reinforcer, you can work it out because you know your terms and definitions. C is our answer. Let's look at D, primary punisher. Well, we're talking about reinforcement. Praise can function as a punisher, but it's never going to be a primary punisher because primary means what? It means unlearned, unconditioned. Okay. So our best answer here is C, generalized conditioned reinforcer. A parent asks you to explain reinforcement to them. Which of the following explanations would be most appropriate? Okay, so part of our task list says we need to explain things in non-technical language, no jargon, ways that parents and stakeholders who aren't RBTs can understand. Okay, so when you get a question like this, which of the following is the most appropriate way to explain something? Okay, we want the least technical answer that explains our term. So we need a least technical answer that explains reinforcement. A, reinforcement is the act of adding or removing a stimulus, which increases the future frequency of a behavior. That's great. You're accurately explaining reinforcement, but is every parent going to understand adding, removing a stimulus? Are they going to understand increasing the future frequency of a behavior? No, because then you're going to have to explain adding, removing stimulus, what a stimulus is, what frequency is, okay? You're using jargon, you're using technical language. It's not simple enough, all right? B, reinforcement is the act of adding or removing a stimulus which decreases the future frequency of a behavior. There you are describing punishment. But again, it's not simple enough, so we need simple. C, reinforcement will increase the behaviors we want to see happen more often. That's perfect, right? If they're reinforced by trucks, you can say, well, reinforcement, we're going to give them a truck and that behavior is going to increase. That's simple. There's no jargon. Anybody can understand C, okay? That's what we're looking for. We want non-technical language and no jargon. And then D, reinforcement is positive or negative. We can either add reinforcement or take reinforcement away. It's great, right? But it's not really describing reinforcement, right? Reinforcement increases behavior. That's the primary component of reinforcement. The only answer that explains that in simple language is C. Prompts are a primary component of discrete trial training. Prompts function as what? All right, so what do prompts function as in the discrete trial training process? Think about where they occur, okay? Think about the purpose of prompts. Are prompts temporary MOs? Well, where do prompts occur in the sequence? They occur after SDs, before consequences. Okay, so they can't be MOs because they don't come before SDs. So A is out. What about temporary SDs? Where do prompts occur? Prompts occur right after the SD, before the response. A prompt is something we use to evoke a behavior we want to see. SDs, of course, evoke behavior. Prompts, we try to fade them. Okay, therefore they're temporary. Prompts function as what? Temporary SDs. B is our answer. Let's look at the rest of the answer choices. C, temporary consequences. Okay, prompts are not consequences, so C is out. And then prompts should not be used in discrete trial training. Of course not. Prompts are a primary component of discrete trial training. As we look at our process here, In DTT, we give an SD, then we give the prompt if needed, we get a response, provide a consequence, there's a pause, and we go again, okay? So kind of a tricky one, right? But just break it down, think about it, or just know that prompts are temporary SDs, right? You can do it two ways. You can work through it, or you can just know prompts are temporary SDs. Finally, which function of behavior describes engaging in a response that feels good to the learner? What function of behavior feels good to the learner? Is it escape avoidance, attention, automatic, or tangible? Well, this is obviously a pretty easy question. All function questions should be very easy. Should be the first thing you learn as an RBT, in my opinion. It's the most important thing to know, right? Why is the behavior occurring? If the behavior is occurring because it feels good to the learner, what is our answer choice here? That's going to be automatic / sensory. A lot of people say, well, my 40-hour training used sensory. Automatic and sensory are the same thing, okay? Response that feels good to the learner, not socially mediated, same exact thing, okay? All right, I hope you enjoyed our presentation today, our questions, whatever you want to call them. Please like and subscribe if you did. That really helps me. Any questions or comments, let me know. Make sure you check out all of our study materials at gumroad.com/RBT exam review or rbtexamreview.com. I will be back Friday with more BCBA exam questions. And then, of course, Sunday is our Sunday shout out. Let us know if you pass so we can add you. Other than that, have a great day, and I will see you soon.